Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I'm Aggelos, founder of the Dungeon Crawler Network, and we are coming to you live from the Mighty Beard Tavern. Yes. No? All right. No one else has a beard. I'm really disappointed by that. Anyway, I am joined by my beardless co-host, Stormzlord. Well, sort of.
Mine doesn't count because it's gray.
Gotcha.
Having fun.
All right. Glad to have you here. Well, Alpha Soul has, well, a little bit.
I got a little something.
A little something. All right. And joining us from the ether, we don't really know if he has a beard or not, but that's Spectralspire. How are you, sir?
No, I'm good, and I don't have a beard at all. Can't grow one.
It's got to be a British thing. I don't think I've ever met a British guy who could grow a full beard. I know there's probably some unicorn out there of a British guy, but every single one that I've ever seen just can never grow a full beard.
It is a rarity.
That's okay. I really can't grow much of a beard either. This is a lot of it. And my father is jealous of my beard, in which case I'm like, you're jealous of my beard? He's like, yeah, I can't grow anything. I'm like, there's some beautiful guys out there with these amazing flowing beards that I just wish I could have, and I can't do it. It's sad. It's very sad. Anyway, enough griping about beards despite being in the Mighty Beard Tavern. We got a fun show planned for you tonight, and it's all going to be about animal husbandry. What we know about it in Ashes of Creation, as well as what some other games have done, specifically why I brought Spectralspire here on the show, because he dedicated a very large portion of his life towards breeding animals, right?
Yeah. Yes, I did. Virtual.
Yeah. So that was a thing. And I also before we get started, we got to give a shout out to our awesome patron supporters, Spectralspire. Hey, he's one of them. Johan, I'm going to try to pronounce this again, and I am so sorry. I'm assuming Michaelis. It's like Michael, but Michaelis, I'm not sure. I really appreciate it anyway. And also our newest patron supporter, Brian D. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. Supporting us over at patreon.com/Dungeon Crawler Network. That's helping us keep the metaphorical torches lit so we can continue to bring you the shows that you enjoy each and every week. Whew, man. We actually also had a couple iTunes reviews. So let me find it. We had one from the U.S., and this came in on Wednesday, so just yesterday. That's pretty cool. From TML1963. Excellent show. Love the show. My only stop for Ashes of Creation news. Well, that's really awesome. Thank you so much for that. And also heading over across the pond a little bit. Actually, pretty far across the pond. Then a little bit north, I think. Yeah, because we got one from Norway. So this is from Sval, it's Svalbard. I probably totally butchered that, but that's what I'm going to say. They said, MMO crave therapy. I was truly inspired by the FTA episode about why single-player raiding shouldn't be a thing. I've never been way into a guild, but I hope this will be the game. And the most inspirational thing, though, is the way Aggelos gets triggered about people soloing MMOs. Thanks for the good podcast, guys. That is true. I do get triggered by people soloing MMOs because you shouldn't be able to solo an MMO. It's an MMO. It's contradictory to what its entire purpose is. So, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to all those who left us reviews. That really does allow people to know that we are a real podcast, that we say real words, and sometimes they matter. Whew. I need to take a drink before we jump into this. Water. Yum. So tasty. So tasty. Anyway, guys, we're going to jump right on into our discussion for this week, and that's animal husbandry. And I'm going to bring the cat on stream so everyone can see her. Hello. Everyone knows she's the star of the show. Wow, hasn't bit me yet. This is actually the longest I think I've ever been able to hold her and pet her without her biting me. This is a world record. All right.
Nice.
I see a chat already. Malfam, I like the solo MMOs. I want people there. I just want to deal with them. Pretty much me in real life. Oh, I just don't want to deal with them. Fair, I guess. Ish. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump right on into our discussion. Animal husbandry, the ability to breed animals, raise them, all that fun stuff, being brought into Ashes of Creation. Now, I just kind of want to get a little bit of everyone's background, I guess, is probably the best way to say this, because I've not done any kind of MMO with any kind of, or even single-player game with animal husbandry now that I think about it, except for a brief stint in BDO, and I just didn't. Anyway, how about you, Storms?
Less than that.
Okay.
Not even a little stint.
All right. How about you, Alpha?
I sort of tried to give it a shot with an Arcage, and then I was just kind of like, whatever. I was busy building gear for fighting, and then I just kind of gave it up. So no.
Gotcha. And Spectral.
Well, same as you. Tried a little bit on BDO, and then 4 years of my life on Arc.
So that's all. Come on.
That's it. just 4 years. It wasn't a big deal.
No, it wasn't at all.
All right. Well, before we get into the art, because I know that's going to be a fun one for us to really jump into, knowing that Steven Sharif really did take a lot of cues from Arcage, can you tell us anything about Arcage, Alpha?
Well, so the basic concept with you mean breeding, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so the basic concept was you would get, two animals, of the same type. You had to make sure that one was male, and then the rest were female. They had to be in a certain state, and then you could coax the male into breeding, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have a chance at getting, more, perhaps better animals with, better stats, etc., from said operation.
I feel like I would totally fail at this because I'd be walking around the barnyard. I'd light candles, put some Barry White on. How you doing, baby?
That would work.
Yeah, no, I don't know if it would work. Probably not. The animals just look at me all weird, like, what is going on here? I didn't know that there actually was an animal husbandry form of Arcage until I started looking into it. And I know part of the husbandry skill was more than just breeding, because it was kind of a little bit of a cultivation skill based on development of livestock. So you were able to get various things, I guess. Like you could harvest milk from animals, collect eggs, butcher them, stuff like that. But you could also breed to increase your livestock, which I thought was pretty neat. Yeah. Now, BDO, on the other hand, does anyone remember if there was any kind of husbandry within BDO itself? Because I remember the horse taming and the breeding, but I never got very far into it because we had a very nice gentleman who was actually helping us out because we were all brand new when we started playing it, trying to teach us how the breeding actually worked. And I got lost. I got way lost with what BDO could do. And I'm riding around on my T3 horse, and he zooms by me like I'm standing still. That was a problem. All right. Well, before we jump into anything else, let's talk a little bit about the animal husbandry that has been described to us thus far within Ashes of Creation. So we know this is actually going to be part of the processing line. It's a profession within the processing artisan tree. So you have your gathering, processing, and your artisan trees.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to actually tame different creatures that we see out in the world. We know the creatures will have different templates when it comes to predefined behaviors. So, I think they gave an example of whether it's like a wolf or a dog, they may look different, but maybe balanced in the same template. So You know, you may have different skins, but if it's a dog, it's a dog, it's a dog. I don't know how complicated they're actually going to get out of this, which we'll definitely talk into a little bit more. You'll be able to capture rare creatures and tame them to get specific traits. That includes pets, mounts, and livestock that have unique traits that can be bred. We're not going to be able to do anything with any of the special mounts, such as dragons, right? No dragons.
Right.
And breeding will change the stats of a mount that is being bred, and they're a form of genetics, but it won't be complex. Sorry, Spectral. Sorry. But animal husbandry will allow you to create unique mounts and with unique abilities and stats, including speed, health, armor, and energy. So really, that's pretty much about it, besides the fact that they did talk about pets having a progression, that you'll be able to level them and have gear on them, which is somewhat interesting. There will be mules, and they'll be breedable, which will be part of your pack mules for when you're doing caravans. And they mentioned about Underrealms, that the Underrealm has different resources, so that will affect farming and animal husbandry. So maybe if you are a Tolinar, you're not going to be breeding many animals. But that's really all we know about it. So let's talk a little bit about what we're hoping from this with Ashes of Creation. Who would actually like to start? Maybe we'll start with Spectral. Spectral, why don't we bring you in and we'll talk about what you were doing in Arc, first of all, with your breeding, and then what aspects of that you'd like to see within Ashes of Creation. Maybe? Spectral, you still there? I don't know if he's there. Maybe he died.
Nope.
Maybe he is dead.
Or he's on mute.
Or he's on mute. How about...
Right, I can go.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I guess what I'm looking for is variety. I like in all games and most things that you kind of do within MMOs. I'm a big fan of choice and giving the player the option of going different ways, and more specifically, valid choice. So I like the aspect of being able to breed the certain traits that speed, armor, health. I'd like to see something about carry or something along those lines for specifically like the pack mules, so that you could potentially haul more faster at a different time. Maybe you have different skills that kind of kick in. If a caravan gets hit, maybe some sort of shield goes up, maybe it gets kicked into gear and it goes a little extra faster for a bit. Something along those lines. The base thing that I'm really looking for is honest choices, not a single meta that is absolutely the best for the mount. So that's the kind of route you want to go. But I genuinely want them to be valid choices.
Interesting. Storm.
I think like with classes, you'll have some metas coming out of it. But it's intriguing when Steve had talked about the oddities that could also come out of the breeding. When you start to have like they mentioned the butterflagger, right, or whatever, just some odd combinations that could bring us together, something that would be unique and useful based on totally disparate, qualities in different animals. So it'll be really interesting what could come out of it.
Right, and I know they showed. Well, let me see if I can pull it up here. I know this was something that we were able to see very early on. I'm going to try to pull it up. And this is going to be an image that I'm going to put out there for people to see who are watching the live stream. If you're not, or watching the video afterwards, but if you're not, you can always look it up, and I'll have links to it in the description of the podcast. But they showed us an example of the griffin, which I'm pretty sure is fairly commonplace for a lot of us now. That most of us have seen it.
Yeah.
Center to screen. There we go. I'm going to pull this up. If I can find it on my desktop. There it is. All right. There we go. There's the image. Oh, and it's right in front of everyone's head. Of course. So we can see this. So one of the things they showed us was that specifically with breeding, you'd be able to actually change some of the traits to change the outside aesthetic, not just like the traits of the actual animal itself, but instead you could see like wingspan change, the shape of the beak change, feather pattern changes. I
Yeah.
honestly am worried that the color change will be the only thing that matters, because there will be a meta that will eventually erupt, or it'll be something along the lines of what ESO did, where you could feed your horses. I think it may be a little bit more complex than what ESO is, but
I hope it is.
yeah, because really with that is you just feed it, it raises points in a very specific section, but eventually you have 60 points in all three.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if we're going to start seeing a meta that no one breeds anything else out of, and it's just for aesthetics. Does anyone think that's going to be an issue?
Well, I hope there's both. I hope there'll be
Yeah.
breeding just for aesthetics, right? That would be great too, right? But then there'll be breeding for special qualities that really are unique compared together.
Yeah.
Okay. Spectral, are you back yet? I don't think so. I think he's...
Man down.
I think he's dead in the water, which... Oh. No, still dead in the water.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's my big... Go ahead. I heard someone say something.
Well, yeah, I was starting to think about when it could, like farming, right? When you go into a freehold, this is going to be really interesting. You're going to farm, right? Well, you're going to probably have the ability to do something like that with farming. So if you want to, you could make your whole profession animal husbandry. The whole thing, right? You could be the one who breeds the special mounts, and they come out to find the special mounts.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting to do.
Right. And I know it says specifically, and this is something that I got off the Ashes of Creation wiki, because they have sources for all the stuff that they put in and where they got this information. But one of the things they talked about the Underrealm was they said since players only have one freehold, and a freehold seems like something that you would need.
Mm-hmm.
If you can only have one freehold per account, you have to, if you're going to do animal husbandry, that's what your freehold's going to have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're
Yeah.
going to add anything into the game outside of a freehold, like stalls within a city that you can rent out?
That would be interesting. That would be a way to if you could build a pub tavern, why couldn't you build stalls, right?
Yeah, build a stable, basically.
Yeah, you got a stable to put it. It'd be interesting. Now, what's really to me interesting is this may or may not be on subject, but the freehold in the Underrealm, and you doing animal husbandry down there. But what if your freehold was sort of close to both, right? Near the entrance to the Underrealm or near the exit of the Underrealm. And you could do animal husbandry of both types of creatures.
That'd be interesting.
Well, I know the reason why they mentioned the Underrealm is because there'd be something very specific.
Mhm.
Like you're not going to be able to get the same resources in the Underrealm that you would outside. I'm curious if there's going to be specific animals that you may be able to breed within the Underrealm itself that don't survive elsewhere. And the thing that I'm thinking of, and I'm jumping genres and games here, is the what they call the chakras, I think it was, in Skyrim. Remember those weird centipede-looking beasts when you went into the underground caves?
Oh, those things,
The
yeah.
Falmer? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious if there will be something like that that can be bred only specifically within the Underrealm.
Yeah, that is going to be interesting. To me, I've really never been involved in this, but it's a really interesting concept of doing this. I don't know if I would use my only, line of artistry to do this, but it sounds really interesting. And then to be able to put a freehold, they're mentioning you may not want to have a freehold where you're not being, but maybe you do, right? So it'll be interesting.
Right.
So I have a slight gripe, actually, that's sort of related to this. Now that we have the griffin up on screen, I really dislike how we have griffins in the game when we're not going to be able to fly them.
Mhm.
So they're just kind of running along on the ground, flapping their wings like chickens, basically. But they're not going to be able to actually fly, which kind of takes some of the
animals.
majestic. Yeah.
Not griffins, chickens.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Man, I was just getting ready to change the image on the screen, And you brought that up, and now all I can think of is they're not called griffins anymore. They're just called road chickens. That's what they're going to be called from now on. I see Nahlis in chat says, they said something along the lines of a marketplace having rentable areas for players to sell their crafted items. I could see them having a nursery of sorts for those types of players.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I think that would be neat because you got to remember freeholds are also going to be rare. I'll say rare. I don't know how rare they're going to be, but the fact is they are going to be put on a spot of ground that only so many people can actually place on it. And from what I understand with the size of the world, does anyone remember how big the world was supposed to be again?
It was pretty large from what I remember. I can look it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure it was like really large.
Right.
I think it's working again.
Hey, do I hear somebody?
Yes.
From the dead, we got him.
I don't know what happened.
Well, it's good that you're back. I was kind of worried that you were dead.
So was I.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you're back. And now that I have this on stream itself, have you seen the Sir Gothic? And shout out to Sir Gothic in chat, who actually managed to, I guess, hammer through all 65 of our past episodes in like a week. That's some dedication. Have you seen the demigryphs in Warhammer? They are ground-only animals. Now I'm going to have to pull this up because I'm not even sure what demigryph is. Were they in Warhammer Online? I can't remember if they were or not, but I do see demigryph knights. Oh, that actually is fairly interesting. They actually look like griffins, but they have no wings.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Yeah, that's a Warhammer thing. Okay.
All right, so on the world size, 480 kilometers squared. To put it into perspective, what we're playing on now, the entire Alpha 0, like stress test map, I guess, Battlegrounds, is 6 kilometers squared.
That's large. It's definitely large. I'm trying to figure out the reason why I wanted to bring it up, because the other game that is, I would say, the closest competitor to what Ashes is, but they're much farther off, Chronicles of Illyria. And Chronicles of Illyria is going for a very large map where I'm trying to find where they actually said the map size. I know they said it at one point in time, and I'm pulling it up here. Starting size of the NA is approximately 96 kilometer by 192, so it's not even a square. That seems different.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
That's 18,000.
That's 18,000?
Yeah. You said 92.
92 by 192.
By 192, 17,664. So that's extremely larger than Ashes.
Yeah. And that's part of the entire concept of that game in general. That's a massive one. They said is estimated it would take 48 hours of nonstop walking to walk from one edge to the other if the world was flat with no obstacles.
Yeah.
That's pretty. That's large.
It's amazing to see anybody.
Well, I think that's part of it. Part of it is that you grow your own kingdom in and around the area that you have, and if you see people, well, then it's a bigger issue. But yeah, the Chronicles of Illyria map, I could say in that game, everyone could have a freestanding house. Everyone who can play on that server is probably going to be able to have some sort of homestead. Whereas Ashes, I don't know if that's going to be a thing. I see, what is it, Woodchip? I assume C is only one world server. No, they're apparently doing multiple servers. It's not like a mega server, if that's what you mean. But yeah, like that's a massive size map. So 480 square. It's still large, but I don't know if it's going to be large enough for everyone to have a freehold. Or maybe even 10% of people to have freeholds. Anyway, let's go over to Spectral now that he's back and alive. Spectral,
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about your Rift adventure and how in depth their breeding was.
Oh, so yeah, with Ark, pretty much when I first got into the breeding on that, it was kind of by accident. But the two types of mutations, and it's all RNG. It's just for breeding a male and a female together, and the male can breed with multiple females at once. So the common thing was having like one male and 6 females in one room, just crammed in a room together, just to pump out babies really quickly, pretty much. And one mutation was a color mutation in a different area. So some creatures, like the giant pigeon, the Argentavis, had like 5 regions, which could have a selection from like multiple different colors from a different spectrum. And then the other mutation is the one which I expect to see within Ashes more than the color one, is stats. So from health to oxygen, depending on the type of creature, movement speed, melee damage, etc., etc. So it was a lot more in depth, and there's lots of little tricks around. So once you've got a stat mutation, you could multiply it infinitely. I spent 2 years breeding this T-Rex, which when I finished with it, could just walk the map, wiping everything. It was lovely.
I'm assuming
like
they're
a
gonna have to do some sort of. I imagine there will be a capping system of some kind.
Yeah, it has to be.
The thing I'm picturing in my head, and I know I'm jumping games like crazy, but I'm thinking Pokemon Go. They had 3 base stats, and I'm assuming with this one there's 4, and you'll be able to have a different rating based on where the stat points are allocated too. So through breeding, you may be able to get a higher section of stats, or in the Pokemon terms, a higher IV stat based on the breeding. Like you breed 2 together that have a high. What are the different things? I just was looking at them and now I lost them because, of course, I clicked on the video and now I'm all over the place. Anyway, a high speed stat, so you'll be able to get closer to maxing out that stat. But I'm curious if these 4 work on a. I'm trying to think of the term for it, but when one goes up, the other goes down. So like you can only have so many of each stat, right? So I'm thinking at this point, say you're only allowed to have 250 points. Let's say 100 is max, right? 100 is max, and all 250 points are spread over all 4 of these. So if you have 100 points in speed, that means you only have 100 points to go between health, armor, and energy, and there needs to be something in each one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? 1 health means the thing dies when you breathe on it. If you're a little overweight and you sit on it, maybe it dies. I don't know.
Yeah. That'll be interesting to see how they actually do that. I mean, it'd be kind of. I understand why they would do it for balancing purposes, but you figure they got to give some advantage to breeders that are. Maybe breeders are the only ones able to ever actually get up to the skill cap or something.
I imagine what they'll end up doing is breeders will be the only ones who'll be able to. If you buy a base horse, think about it in BDO term, because I remember you can buy horses there out pretty easily, but most of them come at a very low ranking, or maybe you can only buy up to NPCs will only sell up to a certain tier of horse. You know, capturing a horse, for instance, may only get a certain number of stats, right? Like they may have a certain breed. We'll use horses for this, but a certain breed of horse may favor one over the other. You know, a Clydesdale probably is going to have higher health or armor than would, you know, I don't know, an Appaloosa who may be for speed, right?
Yeah.
But the wild horses will only have a certain threshold. Like you'll never find a perfect stat horse in the wild. You have to breed for that.
Yeah, which I hope that's the way they do it. You make breeders relevant within the world. You know, people can make a business out of it, make money out of it through selling, etc., etc.
I mean, that was a thing in BDO. Like to get the only way to get one of the higher end mounts was through breeding. There was no, hey, I caught this horse out in the wild and it just so happened to be a Pegasus or whatever. Like the Pegasus that was available was only a very rare chance of getting it via breeding.
That would be good if they keep it that way. If they make it that way, right? If you if you it lends some credibility to the craft to only get something if you're a top end crafter of that particular line.
Here's speaking of something, and I'm glad Spectral's on here for this one. How RNG dependent are we thinking animal husbandry will be? Also, how much should it be?
See, like with BDO, the way BDO done it, when you were breeding, you had like you breed 2 tier 2 horses together. You had a chance for a tier 3, but you also had a chance for it to drop down from tier 2 to tier 1 for the baby to be a lower tier. I don't know if I want to see like that, but I don't want it to be like, no, every single time you breed a horse, you got to get a better stat. Otherwise, it's just really quick and easy. But then also, depending on where you allocate your skill points within the animal husbandry skill tree, you might be able to increase the chance of, getting higher stats more often and stuff like that. That's something I'd like to see.
I like the element of RNG a little bit, because let's face it, when it comes to specific things, normal crafting and whatnot, skill can really come into it. But one of my favorite shows I've been watching lately is Forged in Fire. I don't know, has anyone ever seen that? That's a fantastic show. Anyway, I highly encourage it. It's a blacksmithing competition where they're forced to make a knife in like 3 hours, and even these really skilled smiths, sometimes things just go wrong, right? Like there is skill does play a massive part of it, but sometimes, hey, there was a flaw in the steel. I thought it was fine, but there was an inclusion, and unfortunately, it caused a bad blade, and we had to throw it away. Especially when you're coming to the husbandry side of this, the animal breeding. I'm sorry. Sometimes you get an animal that and this is the form of genetics. Like I said, it won't be complex, though, but when you start adding genetics into it, sometimes you get a horse that has some sort of deformation of its legs, right? Like, what at that point the animal would just die, but sometimes that happens. The albinos that come out, that's a mutation that happens that you can't really breed for. It just happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So I hope that there is a good element of RNG. Like there should be a way, like a path that you follow that all the good breeders know. This is what you do, that most of the time you're going to get a really good animal. But I really think at some point there should be a level of, hey, something went terribly wrong, or hey, something went amazingly right.
Yeah, I think there should be a chance. I mean, the chance has got to be, so it doesn't happen frequently, because then people would stop doing whatever they're doing that way. But there should be a, 80% chance that, well, even 90, something's going to go right and you're good. And then there's 5% chance you're going to just you get a hole in the piece of wood or whatever, you can't do it. Or 5% chance you get a better thing than you expected, like you had said. As long as it's balanced, I think it's a good thing. If there's too much RNG, then it's like, well, why am I doing this?
For when you get one of those super great mounts.
Well, yeah, but if it takes, 100 times wrong to get one super mount, are you going to do that?
Yes.
I don't know. You might. I probably wouldn't. But
Spectral's like, yeah.
Yeah, what else would you do?
I mean, with that, the thing with rarity is the cost in obtaining such rarity. When you get something like that for someone who is specializing in animal husbandry, if you were able to get like that super rare 1 in 100 mount, guess what? You can name your price. There is no that horse is only worth X amount.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't know if Ashes would do it, but in Ark, say for example, you got a certain color appear within a mutation. Then if you breed that creature with another creature, you have a higher chance of that color being passed on to the child. You can keep that color within the family tree, then mix it with something else. So you can reproduce that rare one.
Yeah, you can make it much more likely, but there is, again, depending on how in-depth this goes, there is the possibility of, what are they called? It's not recessive genes making a comeback. Like, you can never completely breed out a recessive gene. It's there. It's part of the DNA of the animal itself. Whether or not Ashes has that, like, I feel like the animal husbandry from Arcade was really simple. Then we have Chronicles of Lyria, on the other hand, which they're talking about having genetics and hybrids of animals, like breeding wild animals that have the ability, that aren't meant to be bred, are domesticated, and you technically have to breed them over and over again to make them more docile, to make them domesticated. They're having that in there. The ability to conserve endangered species, because apparently in Chronicles of Illyria, all monsters aren't going to be infinite respawning. There's only going to be so many, and as they're hunted down, they're going to be gone.
I already know what I'm doing on that game then.
Animal husbandry all the way. I see Woodchip jumping back on one of our previous topics. So I did a quick conversion for 480 square kilometers. It is roughly almost 12,000 acres. With 10,000 freeholds, that would be roughly 8.5% of the landmass. I guess depends if a freehold's not on, on a very small area. And I see Nahlas in chat. This topic causes my mind to spill over into other areas of crafting. Can two professions work together to cause alterations to their design and function? Can a tailor craft sails that are designed to catch more wind, or enchanted blades, and such? Topics I always think about, I guess. It depends on how in-depth they get with crafting. Because so many of these games don't. Crafting is almost like an afterthought. I see Varkin in chat says, Steven said RNG wasn't going to play a huge part in crafting apart from over-enchanting items, so I don't know if it'll play. There will be much RNG involved with breeding. I don't know about, and I get the statement, but if there's no RNG based on breeding, what's going to happen is somebody's going to go out there, figure out the most optimal way of doing it, and then there will be a step, A to Z of this is what you do to get the best mount. And eventually, everyone will just be able to do it. There will be nothing special about it anymore.
Well, there's other ways you can do it, though, and that's you can limit it on items, right? If this is an item-based game and economy, then you can have it such that you can only breed the most rare one if you have the requisite skill and the requisite item, right? So you could limit it that way.
Ishibu says, in real life, there's tons of RNG in breeding.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah.
True.
RNG.
Like when two parents have a kid and you go, wow, that is one good-looking kid. Are you sure it's yours?
Where'd they come from?
Yeah.
I see now it's the chat. I hope they go in depth with crafting. If they want the economy to thrive and don't want cookie cutter items left and right, like WoW's auction house, they need to spend some time with it. They talked about sliders earlier, and I see Snack X-Pack just brought it up in chat about sliders being a thing. I'm curious if whether or not they're going to allow us to, like, going back to the four main stats that an animal's going to have, specifically for mounts. We'll talk about mounts: speed, health, armor, and energy. What if it's a moving bar? So you move one bar, and the other bars move in conjunction. Like I said, the 200 points. But let's say it's something along the lines of what Final Fantasy XIV did with overmelding. And this would work with armor as well, because he said about enchanting or over-enchanting items. What if the max stat, it goes up to 100, but let's say the max, or I'm thinking Ultima Online. 100 is the max, but what happens if you could push speed to 120? But that would be like over-enchanting the horse.
Yeah. That'd be interesting.
And if it fails, the stats go haywire.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Or if it fails, you lose the horse. And
The horse dies.
Up, yeah.
you got to start from, I don't know.
Got some glue.
It dies and you just get the meat. I like the idea of being able to manipulate the stats with the sliders and whatnot, but I I feel like it should be a little bit more RNG. Like you could say, this is what I kind of want to go for. I don't like sliders when it comes to the breeding because then it's like, yeah, this is what I go for. I'm just going to keep trying until I get the one that I want. It's less mystery of I should breed this horse with this horse in order to get this outcome.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Right. So with my luck, I'll breed a horse they'll have no control over, and I'll just be riding around on it while it eats. Yeah. Another part of animal husbandry they did mention was that summoner pets would be able to be customized a little bit with probably animal husbandry as part of this. A modified character creation system allows customization of summoner pets and animal husbandry. I'm curious if the animal husbandry includes summoner pets, or if they're just referring to a character creation system that allows you to customize the animals you get.
I hope it's that the husbandry line allows to work with summoner pets like other pets or other animals. That to me would be interesting.
It's perfect for me.
Going over to mules, let's get off of mounts for a minute and let's talk about pets and whatnot. And I'm actually really curious about pets because I'm thinking specifically like rangers or maybe mages, because they did mention about pets being lovable and be able to have gear with them because their pets are going to have a progression. Is that going to be open to any class or only specific classes? Because if it becomes if pets are a thing you get out of animal husbandry, that is then a crafting skill that should be available to everyone, or is it only going to be very specific classes that gain access to pets from animal husbandry?
See, to me, that says that it would be pets would be open for everyone to potentially have. But I would imagine the advantage that you would get to being something like a summoner or a ranger is that you could improve on them and have, more lethal effects on those pets. So say, me, I'm a rogue, I keep a dog or something like that. My dog isn't nearly as effective as Storms, who is a ranger and has that training and can train in that thing. So his pet would rip mine to shreds, basically.
Okay.
Now, going in depth a little bit more with the type of breeding, they said when you're breeding an animal, there are stages of development within breeding. So you have a youngling stage for mammals, and an egg stage for reptiles and other animals. Changes at the youngling stage affect the appearance of the animal at adulthood. During the youngling stage, there may be quests for specific types of cosmetic features. That makes me think that the cosmetic side of animal husbandry won't exist, or is going to be something more along the lines of what Final Fantasy did with their chocobos, where you could change their feather color by feeding it a mixed number of nuts during a certain period, and after you fed it 60 different nuts, depending on what they are, it gave you a random color code. Well, it wasn't random. Someone eventually figured it out. But when you first did it, it felt random. If you wanted a black one, you fed them so many of the carbo nuts and so many of this and so many of this. And then all of a sudden, hey, you got the color you wanted.
Yeah, it sounds like more like along the lines of Final Fantasy, to be honest, when you say it.
I don't know if I really... Yeah.
Although they said quest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it might not just be feed. You might have to complete the quest. Sorry, go Storms.
No, it's just all going to depend on. This is what they're saying now, right? But as they go into it, and being that this is their first, or at least a large group has been there before, but not as a whole unit, they may say things and realize when they get there, it's not working the way we thought it would. So I'm interested to see how we get into it, how it is at launch and beta, and then how after a year or two it's been tweaked. Because it will be tweaked as we go along.
Yeah, the more I'm looking into it, the more I'm seeing less of the actual, I think the breeding's only going to affect stats, and what you want it to look like are going to be more along the lines of Final Fantasy, where you just feed it X number of nuts or whatever.
I don't like that.
Yeah, no kidding, right? It's like, just feed it every day, you'll get this.
I like the idea of, you breed it and then random possible particle effects or like patterns would appear through breeding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be neat.
Like, that's how I'd like to see it. Not, you can do this quest and you know exactly what it's going to look like, and there'd be no surprise to it. It's just, I want that and that done. So.
Okay. Well, hopefully we hear some more about animal husbandry in the future. And of course, if you guys have any ideas or things you'd like to talk about, feel free to send us a mail. Head over to dungeoncrawlernetwork.com and leave us a message, and we may read it out on the show, or leave us a message on the description of this podcast on the YouTube page, wherever you listen to your podcast, because we'd love to hear from you guys on what you think animal husbandry will have. All right, guys, I think that's going to be the end of our show for tonight. So let's go around and let everyone know where people can find you. Let's start with Spectral.
Yeah, find me on the official Dungeon Crawler Discord channel within the Hands of Fate Guild, or just the channel in general.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Alpha Soul.
Yep, I can be found at the same place in the Hands of Fate channel on the Dungeon Crawler Network. I can also be found on YouTube at YouTube/DRACDOC.
There you go. Stormzlord.
And as well, you can find me in the Dungeon Crawler Network Discord all the time. I'm not typing, but I'm listening. I'm also, you find me at digitalpiperstudios.com working on our next game, which I now have 5 in track, so I'll finish one of them. But it's always fun, and we'll get there.
There you go. And of course, you can follow me over at Twitter at Aggelos, AGGELOS_DCN. And of course, on twitch.tv/Dungeon Crawler Network, where we stream fairly often. You can check out our guild if you're interested in joining us for Ashes of Creation, our Hands of Fate, the Ashes of Creation chapter of the Dungeon Crawler Network, a gaming community forged by the listeners of our shows. We are a PVX guild based on North American Data Center, and we have players from all over the world. We have scheduled events for each region's prime time, so if you're an EU or Oceanic resident but have enjoyed playing with us in the past or for the first time, we encourage you to check us out. Guilds focus on progression rating, small-scale PvE, crafting, gathering, and open world PvP, and of course community growth. Check out our website, handsoffateaoc.com. And of course, you can follow everything we do over at dungeoncrawlernetwork.com. There you can find links to all of our social media, including Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Be sure to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/dungeoncrawlernetwork if you want to help support the show, as well as consider leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes so people know that we are a real podcast, that we say real words, and sometimes they matter. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of From the Ashes, and we'll see you next time. See you later.